The alien woman said it was a grooming ritual. But why is she blushing? The invitation. Kai Ashford had been at Stellara Ridge for 3 months, and the isolation still caught him off guard sometimes. The research facility floated at the edge of known space, a gleaming sphere of glass and metal suspended among distant stars. His work as a cultural liaison meant endless hours studying transmissions, learning languages, and documenting the customs of species humanity had only recently encountered. It was fascinating work, but lonely. The Silthari delegation had arrived 6 weeks ago, 5 individuals with skin like liquid moonlight and eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. They moved with an otherworldly grace, their bodies naturally elegant in ways humans could never quite replicate. Among them was Velena, whose role Kai understood to be something between diplomat and scholar. She had watched him from a distance at first, her silver skin occasionally rippling with subtle colors he couldn't yet interpret. During communal meals in the observation dome, she would sit 3 tables away, her gaze finding him across the crowded space. When their paths crossed in corridors, she would nod with careful politeness before continuing on her way. Then, one evening as twin moons rose beyond the viewport, everything changed. Kai was alone in the cultural archives, surrounded by holographic displays of alien alphabets, when Velena appeared in the doorway. The light from the displays cast shifting patterns across her features, and he noticed for the first time how her eyes caught and reflected illumination in ways that seemed almost magical. "Kai Ashford," she said, her voice carrying the melodic quality all Silthari possessed. "May I interrupt your studies?" He straightened, closing the projection with a gesture. "Of course. Please, come in." She moved into the room with that characteristic fluid grace, her long garment shifting around her like water. "I have observed your dedication to understanding our ways. It has not gone unnoticed among my people." "I'm honored," Kai replied, genuinely pleased. "Your culture is beautiful. Complex. I only wish I could learn faster." Something flickered across her skin, a brief shimmer of warm amber that vanished almost instantly. "Your respect is appreciated." She paused, and he sensed her choosing words carefully. "There is a tradition among my people. The Strand Ceremony. It is performed between those who wish to establish deeper trust, to create bonds of understanding." Kai's pulse quickened with academic excitement. "I've read references to bonding practices in the preliminary reports, but nothing detailed." "It is not often shared with outsiders," Velena admitted. Her hands, which had been clasped before her, slowly unfolded. "I would like to offer this experience to you, if you are willing." "I would be honored," Kai said immediately, then caught himself. "Is there anything I should know? Protocols to follow?" Her skin rippled again, that same warm amber shade appearing along her throat and collarbone before fading. "Simply, come with an open heart. The ceremony requires nothing more than your presence and your willingness to trust." They arranged to meet 2 evenings later in one of the smaller meditation chambers, a space the Silthari had transformed with their characteristic crystalline ornaments that hummed softly with harmonic frequencies. When Kai arrived, he found Velena already there, arranging cushions in the center of the room. She wore something different than her usual formal attire, a garment of deep blue that seemed to move independently, flowing around her like captured starlight. When she turned to greet him, he saw that her skin had already begun to show faint traces of gold beneath its silver surface. "Welcome," she said softly. "Please, sit here." As Kai settled onto the cushion she indicated, he watched her prepare. She moved to a small table where several crystalline objects rested, each one glowing with inner light. Her movements were precise, almost ritualistic, but he noticed her hands weren't quite steady. "Velena," he said gently, "are you all right?" She looked up, and for a moment, their eyes locked. The gold undertones in her skin deepened, spreading across her cheeks and down her neck in a visible wave. She quickly turned away, busying herself with the crystals. "Yes," she replied, but her voice had changed, become softer. "I am prepared to begin." But as she returned to stand before him, as the chamber's light caught the unmistakable rose-gold flush now coloring her features, Kai understood with sudden clarity that something about this ceremony, or perhaps about him, was affecting her in ways that went beyond simple cultural exchange. The question was whether he was brave enough to discover what that meant. "The ceremony begins." The chamber fell into a hushed stillness as Velena knelt before him, close enough that Kai could see the delicate patterns shifting across her skin like aurora lights dancing beneath ice. She closed her eyes, drawing a slow breath, and when she opened them again, they held a depth of emotion that made his heart stumble. "The strand ceremony," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "is meant to weave understanding between two souls. Among my people, it creates harmony without personal attachment." The way she hesitated on those last words made Kai's breath catch. From the crystalline objects on the table, thin filaments of light began to emerge, responding to Velena's subtle gestures. They floated through the air like luminous silk, each strand pulsing with a soft inner glow. She guided them with movements of her fingers, and they danced toward Kai, circling him in lazy spirals. "May I touch you?" she asked, her hands hovering near his shoulders. "Yes," Kai replied, his own voice rougher than intended. Her fingers settled on his shoulders, and the contact sent warmth radiating through him. She began to work, drawing the glowing strands around him, occasionally letting her hands trail across his collar, brush against his neck, sweep through his hair. Each touch was necessary for the ceremony, yet each felt impossibly intimate. The threads responded to her emotions, brightening when her fingers lingered a moment too long against his skin. Kai watched her face as she concentrated, noting how the rose-gold flush had spread further, covering her throat and creeping toward her chest. Her breathing had changed too, becoming shallower, more uneven. "This is beautiful," Kai murmured, not entirely sure if he meant the ceremony or the woman performing it. Velena's hands stilled against his shoulders. "Among my people," she said quietly, "the ceremony should leave the practitioner unchanged. Calm. Neutral." She paused, and when she continued, her voice trembled. "I am neither of those things." Kai turned slightly, careful not to disrupt the threads, and found her gaze already on him. This close, he could see that her eyes weren't simply reflective, they held actual depth, entire worlds of feeling swimming in their luminous surfaces. "What does the color mean?" he asked gently. "The rose gold." She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she continued working, bringing another strand around his chest, letting it settle near his heart. When her fingers brushed against him there, the thread flared brilliant gold, and she gasped softly. "It means," she finally whispered, "that I am not approaching this with the detachment I should have." "That you have." She struggled for words, her composure cracking. "That you have affected me, Kai Ashford. Your kindness. Your genuine curiosity about my world, about me. The way you listen as if every word matters. I did not expect, I did not prepare for." She broke off, turning her face away, and Kai saw her hands shaking now, truly trembling as they hovered in the air between them. "I thought I could share this with you and remain unchanged," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I thought I was strong enough to maintain proper distance. But these weeks of watching you, of wanting to know you better, of hoping you might see me as more than simply a subject of study." "Velena." Kai spoke her name like a prayer, and she looked back at him, her eyes bright with unshed emotion. "I don't see you as a subject. I never have." The threads around them pulsed in response to the shift in atmosphere, glowing brighter, weaving tighter. Velena's skin had become almost entirely rose gold now, radiant in the chamber's soft light. "Then what do you see?" she asked, vulnerability written across every feature. Kai's heart hammered against his ribs. He was a cultural observer, trained to maintain professional boundaries, to document without influencing. But in this moment, with her kneeling before him, her hands still resting against his chest, her entire being glowing with emotions she could no longer hide, all those careful protocols seemed absurd. "I see someone extraordinary," he said honestly. "Someone I think about long after our brief conversations end. Someone whose absence I feel in every room she's not in." The admission hung in the air between them, huge and undeniable. Velena's lips parted in surprise, and the threads around them began to spiral faster, responding to the emotional resonance building in the space. Slowly, with infinite care, she leaned closer. Her hands slid from his chest to his face, cradling it with a tenderness that made his eyes sting. The threads wrapped around them both now, creating a cocoon of light that pulsed in rhythm with their racing hearts. "This is not how the ceremony is supposed to proceed," she breathed, her face now mere inches from his. "Do you want to stop?" Kai asked, though the thought of her pulling away felt unbearable. "No," she whispered, and the word carried the weight of revelation, of choice, of crossing a threshold they could never uncross. "I do not want to stop." Her forehead came to rest against his, and they stayed like that, breathing the same air, surrounded by light that had ceased being ceremonial and become something far more profound, a visible manifestation of two hearts discovering they spoke the same language after all. The unspoken truth. Time seemed to suspend itself in that luminous cocoon. Kai could feel the warmth radiating from Velena's skin, could sense the rapid flutter of her pulse where her wrists rested against his jaw. The threads had begun to hum, creating a harmony that resonated in his chest, as if his heartbeat was synchronizing with hers. "I need to tell you something," Velena murmured, her breath ghosting across his lips. "Something about my people, about this ceremony, that you must understand." Kai remained perfectly still, afraid that any movement might break the spell, might send her retreating back behind the careful walls she'd maintained for weeks. When a Silthari performs the Strand ceremony with pure intentions, with true emotional neutrality, our skin remains silver, she continued, her voice soft but steady now, as if she'd made a decision and was committed to seeing it through. The threads glow white, simple and clean. The ceremony creates bonds of respect and understanding, nothing more. She pulled back slightly, just enough that he could see her fully. Her entire form glowed rose gold now, radiant and unmistakable. The threads surrounding them had transformed too, shifting from white to brilliant amber, then to deep gold, finally settling into a warm copper that pulsed with each shared breath. But when feelings are present, when personal affection enters the heart of the practitioner, everything changes, she said. The colors reveal what cannot be hidden. Among my people, this is considered inappropriate, a failure of discipline. "It doesn't feel like a failure," Kai said quietly. Her eyes met his, and he saw fear there, yes, but also hope. Raw, vulnerable hope that made her seem younger somehow, less the poised diplomat and more simply a woman standing at the edge of something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "I have served as a cultural liaison for 7 cycles," Velena continued. "I have performed this ceremony dozens of times with various species, always maintaining perfect composure. Always emerging unchanged." Her hands slid down from his face to his shoulders, gripping gently. "Until you." "What changed?" Kai asked, though he thought he might already know the answer. "Everything," she breathed. "The first time I saw you in the observation dome, you were alone, watching the stars with such longing on your face. You looked the way I felt, like someone far from home, searching for connection in the vast darkness." Her fingers traced abstract patterns on his shoulders as she spoke. "Then I heard you laugh during a briefing, genuine and warm, and I wanted to be the reason for that sound. I watched you treat every member of our delegation with equal respect, never favoring your own kind, never diminishing us with assumptions." She paused, and when she continued, her voice had dropped to barely a whisper. "I watched you one evening in the garden dome, sitting alone with a book of Silthari poetry, struggling through the translation, and I wanted nothing more than to sit beside you and read it aloud, to share that beauty with you directly." Kai's throat tightened with emotion. "Why didn't you?" "Because I was afraid," Velena admitted. "Afraid of exactly this, of feeling too much, of wanting more than diplomatic friendship, of crossing lines that could complicate everything." A sad smile touched her lips. "I thought if I performed the ceremony with you, I could satisfy this need for closeness while maintaining proper boundaries. I thought I could have a moment of connection without risk." "And now?" Kai asked. "Now I understand that some connections cannot be contained," she said. "That the heart does not respect boundaries we try to impose on it." The threads around them flared brighter, and Kai realized they were responding not just to Velena's emotions but to his as well. They'd become a visible expression of what was passing between them, wordless, profound, impossible to deny. Moving with deliberate slowness, giving her every opportunity to withdraw, Kai brought his hands up to cover hers where they rested on his shoulders. Her skin was impossibly warm, and he felt a gentle vibration beneath the surface, like a song being hummed too quietly to hear. "I'm afraid too," he confessed, "of how much I want this. How much I want to know everything about you, not as research, not as cultural documentation, but simply because you've become important to me in ways that have nothing to do with my work. Velena's eyes widened, hope blooming across her features like sunrise. Truly. Truly, Kai confirmed. These past weeks, every conversation we've had, every time our paths have crossed, I've been memorizing moments. The way you tilt your head when you're considering a question. How your voice changes when you speak about your homeworld. The fact that you always choose a seat by the viewport because you miss open skies. You noticed, she whispered, wonder coloring her tone. I notice everything about you, Kai admitted. It's become impossible not to. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the truth finally spoken and hanging between them like the glowing threads that surrounded them. Then, moving as one, they leaned together again, foreheads touching, hands interlaced, breathing synchronized. I don't know what this means for us, Velena said softly. Our peoples have protocols, expectations. My assignment here is temporary. There are complications we haven't begun to address. I know, Kai replied. But I also know I don't want to pretend this isn't happening. Don't want to let fear of complications prevent me from discovering what this could become. She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes, searching for something, sincerity, perhaps, or courage matching her own. Whatever she found there seemed to satisfy her, because her expression softened into something luminous and unguarded. Neither do I, she whispered. The threads around them began to settle, no longer pulsing with urgency but glowing with steady warmth. The ceremony had transformed into something beyond its original purpose, not a simple bonding of colleagues but a recognition of something deeper, something that would require courage and honesty and a willingness to navigate unknown territory together. As the glow gradually dimmed, neither of them moved to break contact, both understanding that this moment, right here, was a beginning they would remember forever. A moment suspended. The threads had begun to settle into gentle orbits around them, no longer wild and reactive but moving with the peaceful rhythm of breath and heartbeat. Velena's hands remained in Kai's, their fingers interlaced in a way that felt both new and inevitable, as if they'd been meant to fit together exactly like this. The ceremony is not yet complete, Velena said softly, though neither of them moved to continue. There is a final portion, the binding of intent. What does that mean? Kai asked, his thumb unconsciously tracing small circles on the back of her hand. In traditional practice, it seals the bond of trust between participants. Both must speak their intention aloud, and the threads respond by weaving a pattern unique to that connection. She hesitated, her luminous eyes searching his face. But Kai, once spoken, once the pattern is set, it cannot be undone. It becomes part of both participants, a permanent marker of what passed between them. The weight of her words settled over him. This wasn't just a ritual anymore, it was a choice, a commitment to acknowledging what had grown between them. He thought about the complications she'd mentioned, the protocols and expectations, the temporary nature of her assignment. He thought about how little they truly knew about navigating a relationship between their species. Then he thought about how completely right it felt to be sitting here with her, surrounded by light they'd created together through nothing more than honest emotion. What is your intention? Kai asked quietly. What would you speak, if you chose to complete the ceremony? Velena's glow deepened, the rose gold shifting toward something richer, more intense. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute truth. I would speak of wanting to know you beyond these formal exchanges. Of wishing to share not just cultural knowledge but personal truths, the small joys and quiet sorrows that make us who we are. Of hoping that whatever time we have, we might spend it as more than colleagues. As. She paused, gathering courage. As two people who see each other clearly and choose each other anyway. Kai's heart felt too large for his chest. Then that would be my intention too, he said. To know the woman behind the diplomat. To share the parts of myself I keep hidden from professional relationships. To explore what this connection could become without letting fear dictate our choices. The threads around them began to move with renewed purpose, responding to their spoken intentions. Velena shifted closer, her movements slow and deliberate. She released one of his hands to gesture at the threads, guiding them with intricate movements of her fingers. Then let us complete it, she whispered. Let us choose this, together. She began to work the threads again, but everything had changed. Before, there had been hesitation, uncertainty, the struggle between duty and desire. Now there was only intention, clear, mutual, undeniable. Her free hand returned to his face, cupping his cheek with infinite tenderness as she wove the glowing strands around them both. The threads crossed between them, linking shoulder to shoulder, heart to heart. Each time Velena completed a pass, she leaned closer, until they were sharing the same small space, the same warm air. Kai could feel the heat of her skin, could smell something like rainfall and distant flowers, a scent uniquely hers. "In my culture," she murmured as she worked, "there is a gesture of profound connection. It is reserved for moments of absolute trust, for times when words are insufficient." Her hand slid from his cheek to the back of his neck, fingers gentle in his hair. "May I share it with you?" "Please," Kai breathed, the word barely audible. Velena completed the final weave of threads, and they hung suspended in the air around them, creating a glowing architecture of light that reflected their shared intention. Then, with heartbreaking slowness, she leaned forward until her forehead touched his, not the casual contact from before, but something deliberate and weighted with meaning. As their skin connected, Kai felt something remarkable happen. A warmth spread from the point of contact, flowing through him like sunlight through water. It wasn't physical heat but something else, a sense of opening, of barriers dissolving, of two separate beings recognizing each other on a fundamental level. "This is called Valaris," she whispered against him. "The meeting of minds. In this position, if both parties are willing, we can share what lies beneath words, emotions, memories, the essence of who we are." "I'm willing," Kai said, and meant it with his entire being. The sensation deepened. He became aware of Velena's feelings as if they were his own, the weeks of longing she'd hidden, the fear of rejection, the joy of this moment, the hope for what might come. And somehow he knew she was experiencing his emotions too, the loneliness he'd carried since arriving at the station, the wonder she'd inspired in him, the bone-deep certainty that meeting her had changed something essential in his world. Time lost meaning. They stayed like that, foreheads pressed together, hands clasped, surrounded by threads that pulsed with the rhythm of their synchronized heartbeats. Kai felt tears sting his eyes, not from sadness but from the overwhelming beauty of being truly seen, truly known, and accepted completely. When Velena finally pulled back, her face was radiant, transformed by joy and wonder and something that looked remarkably like peace. The threads around them had settled into a complex pattern, unique and beautiful, a visual representation of what they'd created together. "It's done," she said softly, reaching up to touch the pattern with gentle fingers. "This is ours now. No one else will ever create exactly this configuration. It's as individual as we are." Kai watched the pattern shimmer and pulse, committing every detail to memory. "What happens to it?" "It will fade from view," Velena explained, "but it remains. Part of you, part of me, connecting us regardless of distance or time." She took both his hands again, squeezing gently. "Wherever I go, Kai Ashford, I will carry this with me. I will carry you with me." The threads began to dim, gradually dissolving into motes of light that drifted around the chamber like luminescent snow. As they faded, Kai felt the ceremony's formal structure falling away, leaving just the two of them. No longer diplomat and liaison, no longer bound by protocol, but simply two people who'd chosen each other in the most profound way possible. "I don't want this moment to end," Kai admitted. Velena smiled, and it transformed her entirely, erasing the careful composure she usually maintained and revealing someone warm, joyful, and utterly captivating. "It doesn't have to," she said. "The ceremony is complete, but we are just beginning." She stood slowly, pulling him up with her. The last of the threads dissolved around them, leaving only the soft chamber light and the lingering glow of Velena's skin. She didn't release his hands, didn't step away. Instead, she moved closer, until they stood chest to chest, looking at each other with new understanding. "Stay with me a while longer," she asked. "Not for ceremony, not for cultural exchange. Just stay." "As long as you'll have me," Kai replied. And so they stayed, talking quietly as the moons rose beyond the viewport, sharing stories and laughter and comfortable silences. They spoke of childhoods on different worlds, of dreams and disappointments, of the small details that make a life. With each revelation, the the connection between them deepened, becoming more solid, more real. By the time Kai finally prepared to leave, hours had passed, and everything felt different, clearer, brighter, full of possibility. The beginning of understanding. The following days unfolded like a dream Kai was afraid to wake from. He and Velena found reasons to be near each other, collaborating on translation projects, sharing meals in quiet corners of the dining hall, meeting in the garden dome where bioluminescent plants cast soft light across their conversations. Each interaction built on the foundation they'd established during the ceremony. There was no pretense now, no careful diplomatic distance. When they spoke, they leaned close. When they laughed, it was unguarded and genuine. When their hands brushed in passing, neither pulled away. The other researchers noticed, of course. Kai caught curious glances, heard whispered speculations. But for once, he didn't care about maintaining perfect professional boundaries. What he'd found with Velena was too important to hide, too real to diminish by pretending it was less than it was. One evening, exactly 7 days after the ceremony, Kai found Velena waiting in the observation dome. She stood silhouetted against the viewport, watching stars drift past, and his heart performed its now familiar stutter at the sight of her. "You're here," she said softly as he approached, as if she'd been uncertain he would come despite their plans. "Always," Kai replied, and watched her skin shimmer with pleasure at the word. They settled together on the curved bench before the viewport, closer than colleagues, not quite touching but aware of every centimeter of space between them. For a while, they simply watched the stars in comfortable silence. "My assignment ends in 6 weeks, Velena finally said, her voice carefully neutral. Kai had known this was coming, had felt the weight of it hovering over their growing closeness like a storm on the horizon. Still, hearing it spoken aloud made his chest tighten. "I know. I've been offered a position on a diplomatic vessel," she continued. "It's a great honor. 3-year tour, multiple systems, minimal downtime." She turned to look at him, and he saw the conflict in her eyes. "I received the offer before the ceremony. I was going to accept immediately." "Was?" Kai repeated, catching the past tense. "Was," she confirmed. "Now I find myself hesitating, questioning whether the honor is worth what I might be leaving behind." Kai's throat felt tight. "Velena, I would never ask you to give up an opportunity like that. Your career, your dreams, they matter. They mattered before me, and they still matter now." "I know," she said softly. "And I know you mean that. It's one of the things she paused, then seemed to gather courage. "One of the things I love about you. Your absolute commitment to supporting others' growth, even when it costs you." The word love hung in the air between them, huge and irrevocable. Velena's eyes widened slightly, as if she hadn't meant to let it slip out, but she didn't try to take it back. "I love you too," Kai said, the words feeling both terrifying and inevitable. "I think I have since the moment you blushed during the ceremony and tried to hide it." Velena laughed, the sound bright with relief and joy. "I wasn't very successful, was I?" "Not at all," Kai agreed, smiling. "You glowed like a sunset." She reached over, finally closing the distance between them, and laced her fingers through his. "I don't know how to make this work," she admitted. "Long-distance relationships between species are complicated. Communication delays, different biological needs, cultural misunderstandings, the challenges are significant." "They are," Kai agreed. "But you know what I think." He turned fully toward her, bringing his free hand up to cup her cheek, marveling at the way she leaned into his touch. "I think anything worth having is complicated. I think the best things in life require courage and creativity and a willingness to figure things out as we go." "You make it sound simple," Velena whispered. "It's not simple," Kai said honestly. "It's probably going to be difficult and frustrating at times. We'll have to work harder than couples who can see each other every day." "But Velena." He leaned closer, pressing his forehead to hers in the gesture that had become theirs. "I want to try. I want to find a way to make this work, however imperfect it might be." He felt her breath catch, felt the warmth of Valaris beginning to flow between them again, that remarkable sense of shared emotion and understanding. When I'm on that vessel, she said quietly, traveling between systems, meeting countless new species, I want to tell them about you. About the human who taught me that connection transcends biology, that love doesn't require similarity, only willingness. About the man who saw past my formal exterior and found the person underneath. And when you're gone, Kai replied, when this station feels empty without you, I'll remember that some bonds don't weaken with distance. I'll carry that pattern we created, that unique configuration of threads, and I'll know you're carrying it too, wherever you are. Velena pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. We're really doing this? Choosing each other despite the complications. We already chose, Kai reminded her gently. During the ceremony. We spoke our intentions and made them real. Now we're just continuing to choose. Every day, in every decision, we choose this. We choose us. Something in her expression shifted, the last trace of uncertainty dissolving into determination and joy. She moved with sudden decisiveness, closing the remaining distance between them and wrapping her arms around him in an embrace that felt like coming home. Kai held her close, breathing in her rain and flowers scent, feeling the gentle vibration of her skin against his. They stayed like that for a long time, two beings from different worlds who'd found in each other something rare and precious, a connection that didn't require labels or explanations, that simply was. When they finally pulled apart, Velena was glowing softly, that rose-gold radiance that had become synonymous with her happiness. I should go, she said reluctantly. Early briefing tomorrow. I know, Kai replied, though releasing her felt impossible. She stood, pulling him up with her, and they walked together to the dome's exit. At the doorway, she paused, turning back to face him. The starlight caught in her eyes, making them luminous and deep. Kai Ashford, she said formally, though her smile was anything but formal. Thank you for being brave enough to complete that ceremony with me. For being honest enough to let me see your heart. For being strong enough to choose something difficult because it's also something wonderful. Velena, he replied, matching her formal tone with warmth in his voice. Thank you for blushing. For letting me see beyond the diplomat to the extraordinary woman underneath. For teaching me that the most profound connections often begin with a single moment of vulnerability. She laughed, reaching up to touch his face one last time. We're going to be fine, she said, and it sounded like a promise. Different systems, different schedules, all the complications, we're going to figure it out. We are, Kai agreed, believing it absolutely. As Velena walked away down the corridor, she glanced back twice, her skin still glowing faintly in the low light. Kai watched until she turned the corner and disappeared from view, feeling not loss but anticipation. This wasn't an ending but a beginning, the start of something that would require work and faith and constant choosing, but that promised rewards beyond measure. He looked up at the stars beyond the viewport and smiled. Somewhere out there, Velena would travel, would represent her people, would continue her important work. And wherever she went, whatever she did, she would carry part of him with her, just as he would carry part of her. Some bonds, he realized, transcended distance. Some connections were strong enough to weather any separation. And some love stories didn't follow traditional paths but created their own, unique and beautiful and absolutely worth every challenge they would face. 6 weeks suddenly didn't seem like an ending at all. It seemed like exactly enough time to prepare for the next chapter of something extraordinary.